Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I suppose just to sort of start off, I know we've sort of started informally, but I just want you to give like a bit of an intro of yourself, your name. You don't have to give your real name, you can give your alias.
Oh, sure. Is that all you wanted?
We'll start and then I'll ask some questions. I figure they'll sort of dig in a bit too to the things you do.
Sure. So I usually start off by saying Hallo hubsche, schöne Leute. Ich bin Reylaangela, author of Burgundy Heart, curator of Raw Open Mic.
I was looking forward to that. I was hoping you were part of the intro, because I've seen it. That's like that, yeah. And what language is that actually?
That's Deutsche. That's German.
Oh wow, okay, okay, interesting.
So I'm Rayla Angela. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
I've written Burgundy Heart. I've actually written two books thus far. I've written a poetry collection called Burgundy Hearts and a newly released children's series called Little Manila. And I released it on my mom's birthday.
okay, fantastic,
Mm.
fantastic. Um, and I'd like to delve into a bit more of what you do in the community or your community, because I've seen obviously it's a real big part of what you do in the not just a spoken word and poetry scene, but like the creative scene. And I've been really impressed actually and inspired by what you do and what you're trying to do. But I want you to tell me in your words. Like,
Sure. So it started a long time ago. I am a hiker, camper, and I teach for an outward bound school. I'm very outdoorsy. I really love being out in nature. I am in touch with a lot of various communities. Um, One, for example, being the New York Botanical Garden. I used to work for the Bronx Zoo. So really a lot of nature-based environmental justice, I would say initiatives
okay.
I'm really attracted to. So a few summers ago, I decided to join the Master Composting Initiative for the Department of Sanitation in New York City,
Mhm.
uh, where you take about 7 classes that are taught, 30 hours of community service, a few workshop trips that you're supposed to take. I believe it was two. And all that together would give you a certification saying, you know how to compost, you're a master
Mhm.
composter. But our mayor, Eric Adams, who is currently, in office, shut down that initiative that was running for over 50 plus years. I was very stunned by it. And I wanted to keep the community farms alive.
Okay.
So I found local farms in my neighborhood, which luckily I live a block, like literally a block or two away from um, in New York. And I decided to just continue doing what I usually do, which is work with them and compost. And I honestly just merged my passions together. I've been in the spoken word scene for a very long time.
Okay.
I didn't exactly write a book right away. Um, However, I was pushed to. I was one of those one of 20 people that were scammed by an Amazon
Oh
uh,
wow.
impersonator
Okay.
organization on Google. And that's actually on one of the journals
Okay.
for writers and independent publishers, things like that. Anyway, that was a whole other thing. But I basically decided to do it all.
Ah.
This year was just the year. So with that, I then created a Raw Open Mic with the idea of it being a fundraiser to uplift community farms in my neighborhood.
Okay.
I hope that was telling enough.
No, it was very telling. You know, I could see from your content you have a vested interest in the community and locals, and there's a sense of community pride and community cohesion and love. I can see that from the audience you kind of bring in. There's a lot of very powerful performances, including yourself, which I really like. And I think there's something to be said about like the grassroots, and grassroots isn't like a patronizing phrase. Actually, it's really important because the key thing that I feel like we're missing in society is connecting grassroots to nations.
Mm,
You know, because everything starts from the roots essentially. Yes. So I really was curious about sort of how you got to the point of investing so much value into the local community, advocating for cultures and groups within your local community, um, and sort of why you write yourself as a poet and spoken word artist. I mean, I can tell you why I write, but I'm more interested in why you write.
mhm. I'm interested in what you write as well. Did
Well,
you?
if you go first, I'll go after.
I would love to. Thank you for that. So roots are interesting. I like how you put a lot of value there because it is literally a seed, right? It's
Mm,
sometimes people don't have I would say, the choice in where you're seated.
yeah.
And that might be familial roots. It might be metaphorical for that in a sense, but I was born in Metro Manila in Quezon City, and I came to America when I was 4 years old.
Okay.
I did not know English. You know, I was put into language programs, and from that, I don't know how I excelled in English. And with that, I've literally just, I can't remember a time I didn't write. I, I grew up in a household that was I wouldn't consider it sheltered, but it was very isolated.
Okay.
It's still pretty isolated. I have a small family, um, and it doesn't really go beyond there because a lot of my family is in the Philippines. Um, and my dad's family is very, very small. It's, you know, really you could count on your fingers,
Mm,
on one hand. So with that isolation, I used a lot of it in private moments alone because my parents were both, in the working class. I had younger sisters, but never anyone to really speak with. So my voice had always just grown in writing.
okay.
So it gave me I would say a lot of my thoughts were really processed through writing. So when I would speak to other people outside of my family, which wasn't often when I was younger, it was very secluded as well because I always had very singular friendships,
Mm,
very deep quality friendships. The big groups, I didn't really have until maybe college when I developed a personality and I realized, oh, I'm actually funny. And that's because I spent so much time alone, like entertaining myself
yeah.
in a sense. Um, so yeah, I mean, to bring that to the grassroots to nations thing, the reason why I'm so passionate about my community really is because this is what gave me all my opportunities. You
Mm,
know, Woodside is the neighborhood I came to. Um, I grew up here in Woodside. I resided almost in every borough except for Staten Island, but I have resided in the Bronx. When I was in college, I used to travel from Bronx Park East and Gun Hill Road. They're two different places, but I moved and I lived in both of those places. And I went to school in York College. That was my undergrad. And
okay.
that's basically 2.5 hours there and back. So I'd spend so much time on trains in the subway station, seeing every diverse community from stop to stop to stop, all
Mm,
the way out to Jamaica, Queens, where
mm,
I then moved.
yeah.
So, it was a lot of it really stems from just understanding the power of diversity. And I think that not just America, but New York City is really a social experiment. I really believe that. I really believe that if there aren't enough people that believe that could exist in peace
Mm,
and there's equity in that and love in that, then I really don't think it would exist.
mm,
So I really just try to keep that alive.
okay. I feel like London, at least inner London, is a microcosm of New York City.
Mhm.
Um, in some areas it's superficial, but in some areas it's really profound and deep, in
Mhm.
the sense of sort of inclusion and the mixing of communities. Out of London, much less so. And you can tell that by the recent local elections we had in London, where the predominantly most people who voted in Greater London, Inner London, were sort of Labour, which is more like the Liberal Party, and then the outskirts you had Conservatives, which you would say more like right wing conservative. Um, so it can be a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde because there's so much mixing of communities and reverence for cultures, foods, music, which is fantastic, and I love it. And it makes me a bit of a hypocrite because on the other side, you can see where it's also exploited, sadly. Um, yeah, so it's an interesting one. I say I said microcosm, but maybe it's the little sister of New York, I guess. Yeah, in that sense, in that regard, it's quite unique. Um, and I really resonate with the idea of the train journey. I mean, I've recently started writing short poems on the train, but it's on the way to work, and they're quite existential, um, you know. And sometimes I feel like when I write, um, it can be quite abstract, but that's just who I am, and I've accepted it. I love that. That's how I express myself, kind of yeah. Um, so so you write
See
because
that.
sorry?
I think I did see a video of yours where you wrote a poem and it was about um, being in a work booth and you were sort of just like grabbing what you could from the scene. And I really love that about your writing because I really appreciate when a writer gives a first perspective view. So you'll see a lot of my writing is similar. It depends, it changes up, but
Hmm.
uh, your writing does that in at least that video that I saw, and I really appreciated it, especially because you built a scene in my head, and I'm like, okay, yes, and then you did do the essential thing where you took a larger concept and connected it, so that
I,
was cool.
I feel like it's sort of trying to connect with things that everyone experiences. But then also saying that we all live in this a paradigm, I guess, where we have who we in some sense want to be, and in some sense who we're forced to be, and we take pleasures in what we're forced to be. We can like certain elements of what we need to be, but we still love what we want to be. But
Hmm.
obviously society in its present state doesn't allow us to be more how we want to be, rather how we need to be. uh,
Right.
it's sort of like, what are your desires versus what are the expectations of the public?
Yeah, social norms are very challenging.
Mm, yeah.
They do create bounds for how we act and how we receive the world. I agree with you.
Did you have any struggles with the sort of expectations of culture between sort of New York culture and where you grew up, so the Philippines? I only say that I have quite a few friends in the Philippines, the north and the south. Shout out to them.
Mm.
Obviously, I can't speak on it because obviously there are subcultures within cultures, and you know,
Well,
I
I
have.
grew up here in New York.
Okay.
I grew up here, so for being 4 years old, I don't remember much.
Okay.
Um, the Philippines. However, I do hear stories, and that's what actually sparked my children's book series. I was at a table with my mom and her sisters, so my aunts, and we're having dinner, and they're telling me about how they grew up. And for some reason, I just couldn't picture myself there because I wasn't there, going to school at least. So, you know, I put myself in that idea of how my life would have been had I been there and still was there.
Mm.
So that sparked that series really.
Okay. Okay. Um, and was there any particular point in your own life or experience that made you realize this is your path, this is your purpose, this is why you write, this is why you do what you do. What was the sort of defining moment? Because there's a difference between when we grow up with what's expected of us and then we realize actually what we want. And sometimes those two things don't necessarily meet. You know
Mm.
what I mean?
I'm going to be very honest with you.
Mm,
I was quite rebellious
okay.
growing up.
Yeah.
As you know, I've already stated, I lived in a very isolated, family, and my friends were, far and few between. I really, my identity in terms of being a lesbian at the age of like, at middle school when I decided to like, embrace it, I broke a lot of barriers. There were
I
a lot
can
of barriers in my
imagine.
family that I broke.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Yeah.
and so hilariously, I have so my parents had three girls and we're all gay.
Wow.
So my little sister literally married a woman, and I think they should thank me because I definitely carried a lot of those moments of like getting kicked out, being
Mm.
homeless,
Oh
doing,
God. Okay.
just doing a lot of, searching for people that would affirm my identity.
Okay.
So a lot of my writing and things of that nature have stemmed from that. So it was really about finding people that understood depth the way I do,
Mm.
and were willing to accept me for it.
Okay. I'm
So
glad you found that. I mean, that sounds quite traumatic, but you've overcame, and I feel like a lot of the reason, part of the reason why I like to speak to people is there's always the theme of overcoming whatever that was that we had to overcome,
mm,
especially in the creative field. I find a lot of people write and it's a form of therapy. I wrote and I still write and it's a form of therapy. Um, yeah. And it's not just in your community. I think in a lot of communities there's still a big issue or stigma around anything that deviates from the norm, whether it's same-sex situation or LGBTQ, even religious,
mm,
and other lifestyle choices. Um, and I can think of some examples for myself. Um, I think my situation was a bit unique because I imposed certain things on myself, and I went through a religious experience, a very conservative religious experience. And so you could call it in some ways self-induced trauma, but at the time, I think it was necessary, finding a purpose for myself and then coming out of it and then healing from it and understanding how much it robbed me of. I sacrificed a lot to basically deal with something in my life, but you give away your power as well. And so coming out of that and then using writing as therapy. Um, but interestingly enough, I made this journey at the same time people around me were healing as well. And that's my mom and others who were changing and evolving, and I evolved with them. So I'm grateful for that. Even as I said, I have a couple of friends in the Philippines, and I remember I had some friends in a very like religious church. I think it was called the INC. I remember I used to hang out with them at 18, and one of them was gay, and I saw the struggle we had hiding it because obviously you're part of this big conservative church. I'm sure you may know who the INC are. We're not going to go into them, but I just remember it from that. And even my mate, one of my best friends, and I remember he married a woman from Ethiopia. And I remember it's like when he went to tell his mum, and it seemed like it was cool that he had friends who were like black. But then when he found the one, it was a real issue, yeah. So, but that all got overcame. But I remember in the moment, it was quite challenging. Yeah. So,
a lot of the times I really feel this. I really feel that things come to you. You know, you asked this and I didn't answer it yet because I'm thinking about it still. I don't want to say there's no like specific reason, but honestly, a lot of the things in my life that have I have been fortunate enough to experience has come to me. And I think leading with an open mind of and an open heart, literally about
Mm,
different opportunities, I think that's what has really shaped um, what I've done and what I do. I didn't think that I would, I didn't even think about, oh, this is going to be a fundraiser. I literally hosted an open mic.
mm,
I looked at the money and I saw a need and I decided not to keep it. I decided to donate it.
yeah.
So it was a feeling I had off intuition. And
Okay.
it felt so good that I just kept doing it. And it's like life, right? There's just this process in which sorry, this is
No,
the
no, keep
epicenter.
going. Keep
This
going.
is first of all, let me just bring you back to New York City. This is Woodside, Queens, the epicenter of like COVID when it was at the height.
Yeah.
I was hearing these ambulances all day long, and every single one I prayed. And I think, yeah, anyway, we're not going to get there. That actually was the start of anything open mic I've done, to
Yeah.
be fair. And I think that was an omen, honestly, because it
Okay.
came in and it was like, hey, remember when you used to do Wine with Ray, which was my online writing club. So
Okay.
I hosted a live writing club at 7 p.m. every weekend, Saturday and Sunday. And that was the start. My passion was to since I'm a teacher, my passion was to continue finding creative ways to teach online. And I began that little segment of my life. And then, yeah, and then this just happened. Really, it came to me.
Okay. I mean, that's how loads of things they just come to us. And I love the fact that you raised two really key points, according to my own opinion. I mean, one is intuition, and it took my intuition to back up the research and intellectual endeavors I took to understand whether I believe something or not. And that
Right.
research just backed up my intuition. Um, And then I guess, secondly, the idea of attracting something to you. Once you understand how much you love yourself and how much you understand your mission and purpose in life. So I really appreciate that. I'm really grateful that you've come up with those messages there. That's yeah. Um, I so for me, the reason why I write and I do these interviews is to help people understand themselves and not to feel so pressured about self-judgment. We all go through things to understand their own power and their connection with whatever you believe or don't believe in. That's part of us and exists beyond us. But because it's part of us, it's not an external thing that we're subject to. It's something that we can, not in a human interpretational way, we can not, I was going to say manipulate, but what I mean is use. But when I say use, I mean it depends on the intent of our use of that energy or that thing that's divine, that sort of noumena, as they would say in classical philosophy. It's yeah. Um,
We are definitely human, right? There are parts of us that need to reason with things, and we're like, why do we do this? Why do we do that? And sometimes the answer is because you just felt like it. The time was right.
yeah,
Things came, things aligned, messages, um, the small messages we picked up on at the end of the day made us think a certain way. And I'm a big believer in change. I'm a big
mm,
believer in transformation. I'm a huge believer in evolving and revolving.
mm.
Um, and, you know, and this might be a little shameful for me when I say
No,
this.
nothing is shameful, so you can go.
I will say it because I feel a little sad about this part. It's like, when you shed new skin and you're like, you just see different people, you see people
Yes,
differently. And
yeah,
a lot of the times it is something I have come to resolve within myself is that upon these changes, you don't always have the same people around you.
but
And
yeah. That's nothing to be ashamed of because you can't. I think the first thing is being honest with yourself, so there's authenticity, and then questioning the why you feel a certain way. And so if you're in a position objectively enough to understand why you feel a certain way, then you can judge whether it is from you or from part of you. And the reason I make that distinction is we I believe we have a authentic self, and then we have these masks that we create to function in society. And so we do that work to understand. And so if the reasons you make those changes are authentic and they're to do with you being yourself and loving yourself, which enables you to love others, then I obviously every human struggles with an innate sense of guilt, but then I think you would also have a sense of justification. But I
But
get it. Sometimes it's hard to see the wood through the trees with that. And that's totally normal.
but here I am with that,
Yeah.
right? I agree with you, sure. I'm in a place right now where, if I may finish, that shedding of people, what it really does for me and my writing is I really think about things coming full circle and how different people are literally different lessons. So if you aren't learning these lessons, they come back around in different people, in different ways, in different messages, because I really think that the universe is here to teach. We are its teachers, so to say, right? Do you study astrology at all?
I don't. I think, but I've studied many other areas of what people would call our spirituality, um, and I found it interesting. You use the idea of things coming round and you experience them again because I wrote something a while ago about this idea of um, life being like a spiral. So
Mhm.
you experience the same phenomena, but actually the spiral goes outward. So the more you ignore it, the greater the price we pay to understand who we are or the lesson. That's almost like how what some people would call karma, but karma is never against us, it's for us. We need to actually understand who we are. It's just the idea is that the more we resist, the more painful that realization might be once we come to terms with that. But then after that, then we gain a sense of peace, each their own journey. But
I think,
yeah.
no, I was going to say, I think that in the journey, there are, it's an ebb and flow, right? There are processes in
Mm,
that journey where you understand everything, and there are places where everything has been dismantled. And I think that's the beauty of change and understanding that the universe is literally trying to fix herself. You
yeah.
know, it is this planet that we live on, and you know how we have cells in our body and they're doing whatever they do. We are its cells. We are literally, there are, I do believe in good and, not so good. And I feel that the more, and this comes back to my idea of, the more good we see, the more good we do, the more good we are, the healthier we are as not just humans, but in general
Mm,
world. Um, and yeah, that's where I'm at with that.
okay. That's it. Um, I was going to ask you as well the inspiration behind the name Reylaangela, and then sort of the iconography and the symbology around, like, I guess UFOs or aliens or yeah.
So it's Rayla, Angela. Rayla is it's my name. Angela is my middle name, and Ra is, yes, absolutely. It does have to do with the 1962 study of, it was a study about extraterrestrial life forms.
Mm,
You can read it up at the Raw Material.
okay.
It's interesting in that sense. So my open mic does have that as its logo. It's for a couple of reasons. Ra is the sun god
Yeah.
of ancient Egypt,
Mm,
and in my idea of that is that we come to an open mic or an open microphone, an open microphone, um, we come to that with the idea that we are creating around it.
Mm.
Um, and so that is sort of the sun that we are revolving around.
Okay.
The
Uh,
way I host my open mics, or at least it's still a hope I'm hosting it this way, because it hasn't happened yet because there have been so many signups, which is beautiful, a
mm,
beautiful problem to have. Um, and I want everyone's voice on it. So I haven't quite yet, again with the process, like I don't know, you kind of figure out your style as you go.
mm,
Um, it's the same with my teaching voice. I didn't realize what my teaching voice was until 6 or 7 years teaching. And then I'm like, that's my teaching voice. That's
mhm.
the kind of person I want to be. So I'm in the phase right now. This started in February.
Okay.
No, this is very young. I'm in months. I'm in infancy with raw open mic. But my idea is to limit the amount of people that are sharing themselves, spend more time with them, go around and orbit around the mic
Mm.
and do it in rounds. So
Wow.
it'll go, one, let's say it's 8 people. It'll go 1 through 8 and then again and again. This way it is a feeding cycle of people's energy that are in that room. And every experience going forward is always different. Have
Okay.
you ever walked through a Zen maze by chance?
I haven't.
So the idea of a Zen maze is really beautiful in my heart. I think um, how I know a Zen maze to be is you walk through one, and in the middle, when you get to the middle or the center of the maze, you leave something
Mm.
behind that's on your person, and you take something that someone else has left behind. And every time you walk past that Zen maze again, you will never have the same experience.
Okay.
And that's the beauty of sort of having that energy that you come with and leaving it and tracing back to what the environment gives you, and what you give it. It's
Okay.
that receptive idea. Um, and I think that's where I really forged raw open mic from.
Okay. Wow. It reminds me of two things. First, it reminds me of this concept of circling. It's practiced in groups, usually male and female, and it's about, well, more of the men, because I've experienced on that side, is sort of expressing emotions and feelings
Mm,
and really challenging some ideas of masculinity in these circling groups. The second thing it really reminds me of is you mentioned raw, but with your accent, it sounds like raw, which is also probably quite appropriate in terms of it being quite authentic. And I think raw is necessary, to be perfectly honest, when overcoming and tackling and confronting some issues and things that we talk about. It's sometimes raw is the only way because everyone can A, appreciate it, and B, it allows people to be at peace with themselves, knowing that we're all in this together. No one feels like they're in isolation dealing with something, even if we have a different problem to solve. The root of that experience, the root of that, which is the fear or the lack of self-love, is the appreciation of oneself. And that allows us to overcome our different issues because the root of the problem, but the root of the solution is the same. Um, Ra is a really interesting thing as another sort of mythos around illumination, death and resurrection. And so,
it's definitely a
yeah,
homonym.
yeah,
Um, And that is also why I kept it, right? It
mm,
is about being your authentic self. At my open mics, I really try hard not to gatekeep. People write. I write a lot of violent poetry.
mm,
Being alone, in my youth, I grew up in a lot of violence around me and a lot of that. And, I'm used to it. So
mm,
a lot of people will consider some of the things I say very like off-putting or angry. And I'm like, I'm not angry.
mm,
It's just a natural, it's
yes,
almost natural fire.
yeah,
Um, and the way I put that out is through writing. So when people hear it and understandably it changes their aura, in the same breath, it really dissipates mine. When I write these things, I would hope no one gatekeeps me. and
Yeah.
there's a very different reaction of physically doing an action and writing about it and letting the energy pass through us, which is another reason why I love to write. And I also hosted those open mics and the virtual writing clubs. Like they are, or they were, and are meant to allow reflection in the moment of wherever you are in the process of thought. And a lot of the times, I think what blurs my mind is when, and this is always going to happen. Like people will hear something and, you know, a stigma might come by it or a judgment. And a lot of people just don't know how to take an open air to things. And I think that's where I really differ from a lot of people. And a lot of the time, I see a lot of differences. And I sort of just, like really appreciate the fact that people have a voice and um, they write for it and about it, and they're willing to share themselves with me. And that's really something that I admire.
I really wanted to talk about this idea of sort of what you say and it being raw and it's necessary. And you mentioned, you know, some to me, sometimes life isn't pretty and you need to talk about the dark and the light. The dark because people are going through it and it's the acceptance of it to get where you need to get to.
That's
You
right.
can't just bypass all of that because it's a necessary process for self-development. Um, I was thinking about this because the other day I wrote a poem about pornography. Um,
Mm,
wi- and
my favorite.
yeah, huh?
I said my favorite.
Yeah. Well, like anything, it's not that anything's good or bad, it's the use of it or but sometimes it's not what you do, it's the intent. And obviously the intent of an industry is to prey on the the to prey on people, but then often addictions something that's a symptom of something deeper. So it's
Mm,
not saying that something's good or bad, but it asks the why and the why of the person producing and the why of the participant, you know. So, but that's just one idea, I guess, in the wider theme of dealing with issues that can be a bit uncomfortable, I guess.
I totally understand. I literally wrote Burgundy Hearts um, for the reason of, I would say it's very devoted to love, sex, and just extreme pleasures, and that being an okay thing.
Yes.
My mother read it, and I was like, "Oh no,
Ah,
my mom's gonna read this."
yeah.
But she read it. She was committed, and I think it's important to just, yeah, like you said, it is not good. It's not bad. It is something that uh, we we could talk about and we should talk about. And also, just because someone is not on your level of, I would say, spectrum, right? Like
Hmm.
that's what BDSM literally is. And my book mentions it pretty often. Um, it is about two consensual beings who live life in that manner and um, are happy with it.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's, I mean, I've written in the past also some content about sex and my own sexual experiences. So I think it's a good thing as well as talking about the moments where you feel rejection or loss or, rudderless, I guess. I think it's healthy.
and we can't stay on one extreme, right? Like that's the thing about love. We
Mm.
always, and that's why it's always paired with, you know, loss or
Yeah.
hurt or pain or anger. It is not a one emotion sediment. It's definitely um a sushi of emotions.
Sushi is a good way of putting it. That's yeah. Oh, who's your friend? Sorry, in the background.
This one over here, my
Yeah.
roommate,
Yeah. Hey, how you doing?
is Azzy. This is
Hey,
Dice, my
Azzy.
plant.
Nice.
Um, this is Azra.
Hey, Ezra. I love cats.
I am a big catty. I
Yeah.
love she's so good, right? Oh my gosh. She's actually really she's mean. I rescued her. So
Okay.
she's got she's got anger issues. But I think that's why I love her so much because
Okay.
she's very selective. She only likes me.
Mm,
She keeps the girls away and the
mm,
guys farther. So much. I think it's important to be open and
mm.
open-minded, open-hearted, and literally just be in a place where you accept yourself for who you are, you know where you are,
Yeah.
you understand your own boundaries and what makes you happy. And that's where, writing
Yeah.
should
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Mm, they're fantastic. Um, okay. Would like to invite you at some point to a part two, but we'll call this sort of part one. Because it's 11 p.m. UK time. Oh,
ah
11. So yeah, but
that's
it's fine.
yeah.
I accept that, and I think it's well worth it. Like kind of
Well,
but
this
I
was a very productive conversation. I want to
yes,
say
I've
thank you
loved the
very much.
conversation, and the best thing about it is it's just flowed. Like I wasn't actually conscious of time passing, and also which this is why I probably think we need a part two at some point when you're free and ready and when I'm available. So it's been fantastic speaking to you, and
Yeah.
I'd, if you can just give a shout out to your social media, that'd be great. I know there are a lot of viewers who aren't in NY or the States, but this is this isn't just about what you do and people can in proximity can see you. It's about the message you put out there and people not feeling alone, if you know what I mean, and living for their own authenticity and purpose.
Oh, absolutely. You can find me at Reylaangela on Instagram, Reylaangela, Reyla Angela. If you are interested in coming to an open mic event, you can find me at Raw Open Mic, RA Open Mic.
Okay, fantastic. All right.
How was that?
That was good. I'm gonna wish you a
I was like, oh, darn, I got this.
yeah.
I can do this part. It's
All right.
funny because when you do open mics, you have to be aware of your time. And some
Mm,
I am infamous for running over because I take a lot of pauses.
yeah,
Uh, I'm in a place right now where in my open mic, I'm like, okay, intro should not be more than a minute. Get into the poem, get into the next poem, conclude. I am I am working on my concision.
that's fine. It's all good. Okay. I hope you enjoy your dinner, and I'm gonna say good night
Thank
from
you
the
so much.
UK.
Have
Yeah.
a good night. It's been
Okay,
a
and we'll
lot of
speak
talk over
soon.
there.
Yeah, we'll speak
We
soon.
sure will.
Okay.
You are amazing
So are you.
hosting because this was so easy.
All right. Thank you. Speak soon. Yeah.
All
Cheers.
right.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.